Hi, welcome to the Moto Asha podcast. On this episode, we've got Rohan and Shashank from Talk Block. They are the tyre experts at this point of time, the best guys who know what they're talking about and know what they're selling. We've got a lot of questions on tires, a lot of myths that need to be quashed as well. So what better than getting the right guys on this podcast? So welcome, guys.
Thank you, Abir. Thank you, Abir.
So I think I'm going to just start off with one of a very common question. How does one go about choosing the right tire replacement for their bike, or for that matter, for a purpose?
Yeah. Sure. First of all, thanks a lot for taking the time to invite us. Right. I'm here with Shashank, my teammate. He handles sales and he takes care of all multiple operations as well. So coming back to your question, choosing the right tires is always, it's pretty much easy, right? It pretty much goes on to like figuring out what kind of riding do you actually do. That's the first question what we ask anybody who actually is in some sort of a confusion, right? If they're planning on long rides, if they have an upcoming trip, or if they're just normal commuting, use your vehicle for what purpose. So basically, depending on that, right, you give the right solutions, right? Somebody wants to go on a longer trip, somebody wants to use their vehicle just for normal commute. So it depends, right? So that's the whole point, like how you actually figure out what kind of tires you need. Basically depends upon your riding style, what do you want to actually do. The end point is like what kind of, what is your intention behind changing new tires, right?
Got it.
So that's the thing, Abhi.
Yeah. So tell me different types of tires. I know a lot of people still have a debate on, what is it? What type? Should I go for a bias ply tire or radial tire? Is there a big difference? And do you still get both these types of tires in the market?
Of course we do, Abir, right? We do have a mix of biased and radial. Each one has its own properties, I would say, right? Say for example, a vehicle like a Royal Enfield Bullet, right? It needs bias play tires, right? Say for example, an RR310 or an R15, right? It needs a radial tire. Basically, bias ply tires and radial tires are more of like they're differentiated in like how the tires are actually made. The construction of the tires are actually different, right? So the manufacturers themselves actually pre-install these tires, right? So it is pretty much easy. Bias ply tires means the sidewalls are thicker, right? They can actually withstand a lot more weight than a radial tire. Whereas a radial tire, the construction is different. It is not just basically meant for weight, but more of, the cornering speed and the grip overall. So that way, yeah, Abir.
Yeah. Okay. One of the questions that I get asked personally is before before you change replace your OEM tire that it's come with, is there something that you need to look at, there's a speed rating, load rating, and does it need to really be matched? So does that really come in? Is it really important?
So the preload and also the speed rating is a really very mandatory rating, especially for the super bikes, right? 600 plus cc categories. They are really very important aspects in order to change the tire, and they are really very important, is what I would like to say.
Okay, but you have to definitely match what your stock tires came with. That's what you're trying to say, right? At this point in time.
Yes, exactly. Like nothing would be below than the speed rating, but then when it comes to superbike sizes, like let's say 180, 55 or 190, right? They all have to be being an owner of that particular motorcycle, you need to actually look into that aspect. Is what I'm trying to say, precisely.
Okay. So, one of the conversations that also happens is if your stock speed rating was say 190, 200 kilometers per hour, okay, if you get a speed rating that is lower than that, but your conditions you know, do not need you to be at those speeds, or you cannot go at those speeds, do you still need to go to those speeds, or would you say that, okay, is it basically what I'm trying to say is it as per what I'm going to be doing with that tire, and at what speed am I going to ride? Does that apply to tires?
Like doing higher speeds, it basically depends on every individual, right? But then it's actually better to have an higher speed ratings always than what your motorcycle is always specified about, correct? They're very much particular about the speed rating and everything like that, because even the motorcycle plays a very important role into that, because the balancing and the weight, everything comes into the picture. That is the reason we have to always suggest. We actually suggest the higher speed ratings. So that's the main aspect of it. Irrespective of you want to choose it or not, you'll have to also think about your motorcycle, what it's capable of and what it can do, and according to that, you got to choose your motorcycle type, right? That's how it is.
Yeah. Again, with sizes, is it how much of a difference does it make to somebody if they ask you, hey, I want to upsize the width of my tire, or I want to reduce the width? Do you guys, I mean, is there a formula to it, or is it just a try it and test it method?
Yeah, definitely there is always a room. So for very common questions, we like top block what faces on a day-to-day basis, that especially for this regular 300cc category segments, like for example 390 Dukes, RC390s, Dominance, right? Usually youngsters, they would want to widen their rear tire, like they would ask for 160. So see, what we recommend, being a tire expert, that 10 or maybe that should be good. But wider than that would be a problematic scenario. So that is why we do not really suggest anybody that. But widening up to 10 that is really very great. I mean, that is something which we can manage, and that will be good for motorcycle as well.
Yeah. So you're trying to say that there's a negative effect of sometimes upsizing it more than 10 But what are some of the effects that can go bad?
Like see, again, the motorcycle or your car actually works best on OE tires, okay, OE sizes, right? So apart from like see conditions, like say suppose you're gonna take your bike to the track, right? We have had people like who gain multiple in terms of timing, right? In terms of the contact patch area, like if they downsize the tire, right? They've made better gains, right? So we always recommend sticking to the OE size, right? Bigger tire or nobody asks for a thinner tire, but like bigger tire, it is mainly for aesthetics, right? There's no performance gain or something. Like we haven't had anyone come to us and tell that, okay, like I installed a bigger tire than my OE size and my performance improved, right? It is more of the way how they want the bike to look like, right?
Got it.
Other than that, it has actually, it has cons rather than pros, I would say, right? Like over time, it'll actually impact the shaft, impact the internals of the vehicle, which is really negligible, right? But over the period of time, it might have a small difference, right? Because it's, the weight of the tire is different. So everything, like the crank, the capacity actually changes, the mileage might take a hit, right? So all those things actually can happen. But if you want the aesthetics, like you got to compromise on these things as well. And, we try and educate the customers as much as possible, right?
Yeah.
And, most of the people, whoever actually come to us, is basically to make the bike look cooler, I would say. We have had several interceptors, like the GT owners who always like to upsize, right?
Yeah.
So that way.
Yeah. So, okay. So I've got I think I've got most of the part covered as to how do you choose your tire, what kind of tire should I be putting. Um, how how do I know that this is the life that's left on my tire, and what is an average life of tires generally?
See, I mean, there's no such as like you cannot actually define an exact figure. It again comes down to the riding style,
Okay.
right? And how well you actually maintain your bike, right? How well you can actually brake, how how often you check your pressure. All those things actually come into the picture, right? Basically, I mean, there is an average for every tire, right? I mean, there is an average figure what we give, but it is not the same. It depends upon like the rider, right? So we give a ballpark figure. I mean, name a bike, I can tell you, right?
Yeah, well, I'll give you an example of mine only. So I could burn my rear tire in 4,000 and 5,000 kilometers sometimes. Sometimes I've gone up to 8 and 9,000 kilometers on my rear tire just because I didn't accelerate too hard during that, that use. I was pretty much sober when I was riding it nicely. So,
Right. I mean, which tire are you talking about?
so I've had the Metzeler Tourances on my bike, on the
Right.
Tiger, yeah. So, I mean, they've lasted, I mean, generally they last 8 to 10 on the rear, and then the front every time lasts me way longer. So I don't know if that's a very general statement to make.
No, see, like we have had people who, the Turans, where the tires have come more than 15,000 kilometers. Some customers have come back to us like within like 6,000 kilometers, 4,000 kilometers, right? A lot of factors actually come into the picture, right? Your braking is super important. I mean, if you're just using the rear brake for everything, I mean, the tire is actually gonna wear out even more faster, right? If you don't maintain the proper pressure, the tire is gonna wear out faster. If the wheels are not balanced, the tire is gonna wear out faster, right? So there are multiple factors, right? So on a Touran, say an average kilometer would be something around 12,000, right? 10 to 12,000. So anything less than that, that means like you're taking the bike too hard, right? Anything more than that, like, it's actually good, right? That shows that, like you are actually doing a pretty good job maintaining your tires. Yeah.
Yeah. And how does somebody, how does a layman come to know that my tire is gone?
Yes, Shashank.
All right. So when it comes to 390s and Dominos, right? Like usually what happens is you can see the center part and and also the side walls. That is the what do you call that? The edges of the tire, right? That is left hand side and the right hand side. Usually you will see these grooves losing their depth. Usually you have this depth, right? The threads, basically, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
They have this depth, correct? So how you recognize that your tire is worn out, that is, they wouldn't look worn out, but then you will be able to figure it out once you put in your forefinger into the groove, and you'll be able to measure how deep is it. So the construction what is there outside the thread basically is what gives you the grip and each and everything. So that's what it is.
Yeah. Is there a tire wear indicator? Is there anything that visible on a tire that is seen that you can?
Yeah. So the tire indicators are basically, you can actually, that is really very evident, very much clearly evident if you've come across a motocross tire, like the Nobby's tire, I would like to say. There would be marking as well, there would be a limiter. So there is where, you will be able to figure out where, what's the maximum capacity of the tire and what's the maximum life of the tire would be. So motocross tires would be a really very great example if you can look into it, and they'll have an indicators onto that. Usually all the tires do have. It's not like they don't have, but certain brands do mention them, and certain brands not do. So that's how it is.
Yeah. So I've got a mixed question, and this is something that I was watching a video on how long can you store tires. What is your view on how long can you actually store tires, and how old can the tires be before you should not be using those tires?
Got it. All right. This is something a very genuine and a common question what we actually come across on a day-to-day basis, right? So usually what manufacturers claim about the shelf life, basically this is called as a shelf life, the storage of the tire, right? What manufacturers do is that they manufacture the tire and they have an minimum time frame of like, let's say, like 3 to 4 months or like 6 months, right? So that is the shelf life what they store, and then is when after that only the tires have been out to the market. So after which I would say if they are being stored properly, like when I say they're being stored properly, which means you will have to wrap up them with a polythene expandable cover, like properly, and under the normal room temperature. If you store them very well, right, they can actually last up to like 3 to 4 years. But we usually really do not recommend that, and it's not really good also, because in a longer run what happens is there are chances as soon as the tire gets exposed to the atmosphere, there would be some sort of a crack which would be visible, and that would not really satisfy a customer or a motorcyclist.
Yeah.
So that's how it is. Yeah.
Great. So I've got, I think, one last question for you before you guys can probably open up and tell me if there's something that I've missed out. Why do we see cracks on tires? Very general, very generic.
What's that?
Why do we see cracks on tires? Why does the rubber crack?
Cracks, I mean, like, cracks is a property not of tire, it's a property of rubber, right? Any rubber, rubber material, right? It ages, right? Everything has an expiry date, right? Like, you can't, even if you actually take a new bike, right? Just keep it over there, like, you don't ride it at all, right? You'll see tire cracks develop after, say, about like 5 to 6 years, 7 years and stuff like that. That's a property of rubber. That's nothing, you can't, like, you can actually retain that, it's not preventable, right? It is going to happen one or the other day, right? But again, right, a lot of things actually come into the picture, right? Michelin tires actually are pretty good in terms of their overall shelf life, right? They have an aging of, say, about 3 years, like where the tires are still actually fresh as they were newly manufactured, right? So it depends upon manufacturer to manufacturer. Cracks on rubber is called aging, right? So the rubber actually ages with time. So nothing to actually worry about. You just need to actually change it.
Yeah. Cool. Is there something that I've missed out on?
I think you have hit down on all good points, but I'll just tell you one important thing, right? Which people are actually, this is something what I would like to let people know, right? See, the Indian government actually came across a restriction on the import of tires, which was about 2 years back. That's exactly when we actually started our business, in the month of June 2019, right? So we are also about 2 years old, and there has actually been tremendous shortage of tires, especially in the premium tire sizes, both with respect to cars and motorcycles, right? We have had a lot of customers, who have cancelled their rides, were not able to actually go on time because there is actually no tires, right? We do keep in touch with the manufacturers almost on a daily basis, and they're saying the restriction might open up. So what has happened is, like, say suppose there are 100 bikes, there's only like 40 tires which are going to come in, right? It is actually to promote Indian manufacturers to start making tires in that sense, right? That's the reason why companies like Apollo have come up with the Redstein range of tires, both for cars and motorcycles, right? Which has been, which has been really popular, I would say, right? Like in the last 3 to 4 months.
It is a good tire, though. I mean, I've seen it. They're good tires.
Yeah. So that's the basic thing, right? So people are actually still, like the prices are actually really on the higher side due to all this inflation and, lack of availability in the international market and all that, right? There might be, the future, like how it goes in the next 1 year, there are chances where the government can actually open up this, right, and make the import free again, right? Although like very less chances, right? If not, there are companies like Apollo taking newer initiatives to introduce more sizes, right? And even then, like there is some amount of tires which are actually going to come in all the time. And that's the problem we as a company also think are trying to solve that to bring down the cost as much as possible, right? So for the riders basically, right? So this is something really important which is actually going on now in the tire industry, I would say.
Yeah. So you're saying definitely things are going to change sometime soon, but yes, I mean, I think that it's affected and impacted almost everybody. For that matter, I mean, even I would think the same way, which is, hey, I need to stop munching miles because the cost of tires have gone up. So yeah, I mean, let's hope for the best and let's hope things change. So
it's all part and parcel of the game, like there is supply chain problems in almost every industry. It's not like in the tire industry only, right? Like even the car manufacturers, right? Like they have a waiting period of 6 months to 1 year, right? So forget tires, right? I mean, so this is how it is. But as a company, we stand responsible to actually solve this issue and, make sure that people get what they want at the right price. That is what we are also working very hard almost every day, right? Yeah. So hopefully you'll see good things coming up. Yeah.
Great. That's good news and good news to end this podcast also. But yeah, thanks guys. I think you were brilliant as in everything on ground and we're glad to have you on this podcast.
Hey, thanks, man. Same here, Abir. Shashank.
Yeah, really appreciate it, Abir. And this is something which we would like to, showcase it to our audience as well, correct? And we would want to educate people. That's our main motto. Like we would want to educate people and we would want to let people know what's really happening and what's going on. So that's what we are up to.
Great. Cool. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to this podcast. I want to hear your stories, your motorcycle experiences, what you've been doing, and how motorcycles have made your life better. So if you have something to say, DM us on Instagram, and I'll be more than happy to get you on this podcast.